Silence. The desert knows no other sound but the whisper of the wind as it shifts the sands of time. Yet here, about 185 kilometers northeast of Giza, even the wind seems to hold its breath. This desolate stretch of land is called Tanis, a place once alive with temples, obelisks, and the voices of priests calling upon forgotten gods. The ancient Egyptians knew it as Janat, the Bible called it Zoan, and today it is nothing but a wasteland of cracked granite and scorched ruins. When 19th century explorers reached Tanis, they expected to find a city lost to centuries of sand. What they discovered instead looked like the aftermath of a catastrophe so immense that time itself seemed to have stopped. Colossal granite statues, each weighing dozens of tons, were not just toppled or eroded by the elements, they had been burned. Their surfaces were melted into a dark, glass-like crust, as if they had been exposed to the core of a furnace. Huge stone columns lay shattered into fragments, their cores fused and deformed by heat. The question that haunted those first explorers has never been answered. What could possibly melt granite? The temperature required exceeds 1200 degrees Celsius. No natural fire, no lightning strike, no simple act of destruction could have achieved such devastation. This was not erosion. It was obliteration, the signature of a force or technology far beyond anything known to exist in the ancient world. Officially, Tanis was abandoned over time as the Nile shifted its course and trade routes moved elsewhere. Yet the vitrified stones, the blackened ruins, and the eerie traces of extreme heat tell a different story, not of decline, but of annihilation. Something extraordinary happened here, something so violent that it erased not just a city, but the very memory of what once stood in its place. Tanis is not an isolated mystery. It is a single thread in a vast and tangled web of enigmas that run throughout the history of humankind. Hints of civilizations that rose, flourished, and perished long before our own. These ruins force us to ask questions that our textbooks cannot answer. What if the great monuments of antiquity, the pyramids, the temples, the stone cities, were not the beginning of human civilization, but its final echoes? What if they are the last surviving traces of a forgotten world that fell in a cataclysm we no longer remember? To search for answers, we must leave the ruins of Tanis and travel to the heart of Egypt itself, to the Giza Plateau, where eternity was carved into stone. Few places on Earth are as instantly recognizable. Millions of visitors stand at the base of the Great Pyramid each year, gazing upward in silence at its impossible symmetry and colossal scale. We believe we know its story. We have been told that it is the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, built around 4,500 years ago by tens of thousands of workers using copper chisels, ropes, and wooden sledges. It is a tidy narrative, one that fits perfectly within our modern sense of progress, a linear path from primitive tools to advanced machines, from ignorance to understanding. But what if that comforting story is nothing more than a facade, a convenient mask hiding a truth so vast that we can barely face it? Because the reality is that the Great Pyramid of Giza defies explanation. It does not belong to its time. It does not even belong to the known technological capabilities of the ancient world. In fact, it stands entirely apart, as if it were built not by the Egypt we know from history, but by a civilization whose existence has been erased from memory. The Great Pyramid is an anomaly, a monument so advanced in design and execution that it challenges both ancient and modern engineers. Composed of over 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, each weighing between 2 and 15 tons, it rises with such precision that its four sides are aligned with the cardinal directions to within 3.5 arc-minutes of accuracy. That margin is so minute that the slight deviation could easily be explained by the shifting of the Earth's crust over thousands of years, not by human error. Inside, the pyramid reveals a complex network of shafts, corridors, and chambers, all engineered with astonishing precision. And yet, despite its supposed purpose as a tomb, there is no mummy, no treasure, and no funerary inscriptions. The so-called King's Chamber is completely bare, containing only a rectangular granite coffer, too large to fit through the narrow passageways, suggesting that it was placed there before the chamber was sealed. The sarcophagus itself is rough, almost crude, in stark contrast to the mirror-smooth walls around it. Why would builders capable of such mastery leave such an inconsistency? If this truly were a burial monument, where are the remains of Khufu? Where are the inscriptions proclaiming his glory? No pharaoh in history omitted his own name from his tomb. And yet here, in the greatest monument of them all, there is silence. A growing number of researchers, including architects, engineers, and independent archaeologists, have begun to ask a forbidden question. What if the ancient Egyptians did not build the Great Pyramid at all? What if they, too, found it already standing, an inheritance from an age far older than their own. Perhaps they did what humans always do when they encounter something they cannot explain. They sanctified it, transformed it into a symbol of power and divinity, and wove it into their mythology. The deeper excavations at Giza seem to support this possibility. Beneath the surface of the plateau lies an entire world hidden from public view. The Giza Plateau is not solid bedrock. It is riddled with tunnels, shafts, and chambers that stretch deep beneath the pyramids, forming a vast underground complex. For centuries, these passages were dismissed as natural fissures or unimportant burial shafts. But old maps from the 19th century already show several of their entrances, some leading to vast, water-filled caverns hewn from the stone with astonishing precision. One of the most striking of these is known as the Tomb of Osiris, a vertical shaft that descends more than 30 meters into the ground. At the bottom lies a granite chamber surrounded by water, accessible only by narrow bridges carved into the rock. In the center rests a sarcophagus, empty, uninscribed, and as enigmatic as the pyramid itself. The official explanation is simple. It was a symbolic tomb of the god Osiris, created for ritual purposes. Yet the sheer effort required to carve such a structure deep into the bedrock suggests something more. Why go to such lengths for a symbolic tomb? Why carve chambers no one was meant to enter? No bodies have ever been found there, no funerary artifacts, no hieroglyphic inscriptions. Just empty stone chambers and the lingering sense of something ancient, powerful, and deeply misunderstood. Even the surface monuments seem to point toward a forgotten epoch. The weathering patterns on the Sphinx and the walls of its surrounding enclosure tell a story that geology cannot ignore. They bear the unmistakable signature of water erosion, rounded grooves and channels carved not by wind or sand, but by centuries of heavy rainfall. Yet Egypt has not seen such rains for more than 7,000 years. This means that the Sphinx, and possibly the entire Giza complex, may have been built in a time when the Sahara was still green, when ancient rivers flowed where dunes now lie. That would place its construction not in the age of pharaohs, but in a prehistoric world that officially should not exist. If that is true, then everything we think we know about ancient Egypt collapses. The Great Pyramid ceases to be a royal tomb and becomes something far more mysterious. Perhaps a relic of an earlier civilization that rose, reached unimaginable heights, and then vanished, leaving behind only stone as its final testimony. And if that is the case, then the question we should be asking is not how the pyramids were built, but why. The deeper we descend into the mysteries of Giza, the more it feels as though we are exploring not the ruins of a civilization, but the remains of something alien to our understanding, a legacy of knowledge and engineering that does not belong to the Bronze Age. What modern excavations have revealed beneath the plateau is nothing short of astonishing. Using ground-penetrating radar, infrared thermography, and muon tomography, the same technology used to scan volcanoes and nuclear reactors, archaeologists have mapped out an intricate system of chambers, shafts, and passageways hidden deep within the limestone bedrock. Many of these structures are still unexplored, sealed for safety or out of caution. But the few that have been entered challenge every assumption we've held about ancient Egypt. In 2017, an international team known as the ScanPyramids project made a discovery that shook the academic world. By analyzing the flow of cosmic particles through the Great Pyramid, they detected a massive void, a hidden cavity nearly 30 meters long, located directly above the Grand Gallery. It was not an accident of construction, nor a flaw. Its geometry is too deliberate, too precise. Whatever it was, it had been intentionally built into the structure and concealed for over 4,000 years. When the news broke, headlines around the world called it the biggest discovery in Egyptology in a century. Yet official explanations were vague. Some said it was an unfinished chamber, others a simple relieving space to reduce pressure. But privately, researchers admitted they had no idea what it truly was. That revelation raised an even more profound question. How many more voids remain undiscovered? Because the Great Pyramid has always resisted our attempts to fully understand it. Every time technology advances, it reveals yet another mystery, another corridor, another cavity, another detail that makes us realize how little we know. And perhaps most intriguing of all, these underground spaces do not appear to be confined to the pyramids themselves. Several kilometers away, archaeologists uncovered a vast labyrinth buried beneath the sands of Horera, known in ancient texts as the Labyrinth of Egypt. Greek historian Herodotus described it over 2,000 years ago, claiming it contained 12 courtyards, 3,000 chambers, and endless passageways connecting them. When 19th-century explorers sought it out, they found only fragments. But in recent decades, radar scans have confirmed that enormous subsurface structures still exist beneath the area. Complex networks that appear to stretch for kilometers in every direction. If confirmed, this would mean the ancients possessed not only the means to build such massive subterranean complexes, but also the ability to align them with mathematical precision, often following celestial patterns that modern astronomers are only beginning to decode. These discoveries suggest that what lies beneath the desert may be even more important than what stands upon it. And that brings us to another site, one that has long been shrouded in both legend and secrecy: Alexandria. While the world marvels at Giza's pyramids, a different kind of excavation has been unfolding beneath the modern city of Alexandria, Egypt's ancient capital on the Mediterranean coast. Under layers of urban stone, beneath modern apartment blocks and markets, archaeologists have found the remains of Cleopatra's palace, submerged beneath the harbor. For decades, divers have been mapping this underwater world, discovering columns, statues, and sphinxes, all toppled and half buried under silt. But in the early 2000s, something even more remarkable emerged. Beneath the seabed, sonar imaging revealed large voids, sealed chambers hidden within what was once the royal quarter. Some were carved directly into the limestone, others lined with granite. Excavation was nearly impossible due to the city built above, but in recent years, a new clue reignited the search: an ancient tunnel discovered beneath the nearby temple of Taposiris Magna, a few kilometers west of Alexandria. In 2022, Egyptian archaeologist Kathleen Martinez announced a find that could rewrite history: a kilometer-long tunnel running deep beneath the temple, perfectly cut through layers of solid rock. The tunnel is so precise, so smooth, that geologists described it as a marvel of ancient engineering. Martinez believes this may lead to the lost tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, buried together in secrecy after their defeat by Rome. The hypothesis sounds like something from legend, yet it aligns with a historical record. Ancient sources describe their burial in a temple dedicated to Isis, the goddess of life, magic, and death. But as the excavation went deeper, something unexpected happened. The deeper the team descended, the more they realized that the tunnel was not just a passage, it was part of a much larger system. Side chambers branched off into the rock, leading into spaces so old that even the Ptolemaic masonry above them appear to have been built atop something far older. Beneath the ruins of Cleopatra's temple, beneath even the strata of Greek and Roman construction, lay evidence of pre-dynastic engineering. Tunnels and walls built with a method entirely different from later Egyptian work. Whoever carved them had access to technologies and techniques that the Ptolemaic and Roman builders could only imitate. It's as though Alexandria, like Giza, was built atop the bones of an older civilization. If that's true, it suggests something extraordinary: that the great cities of Egypt were not founded from scratch, but constructed over sites that had already been sacred for millennia. Places where the ancient world tried, again and again, to preserve the remnants of a forgotten age. And that forgotten age might not have been merely Egyptian. Across the Middle East, archaeologists have unearthed structures that seem to belong to a lost epoch. From the Cyclopean walls of Lebanon's Baalbek, to the enigmatic ruins of Abydos, to the underground halls of Derinkuyu in Turkey, these sites all share one trait: they are older than history and built with precision beyond their supposed time. This growing body of evidence suggests that before Egypt's dynasties, before Sumer or Babylon, there existed an advanced culture, one capable of architecture, mathematics, and engineering that rival our own. We may have lost their name, but their fingerprints remain in stone. Even the Book of the Dead, Egypt's sacred funerary text, hints at an inheritance far older than its own authors. It speaks of a time, before the first sunrise, when the gods walked with men, and knowledge was passed from the stars. Whether these are metaphors or memories, no one can say. But when we look at the technology buried under Giza, the melted stones of Tanis, and the perfectly machined tunnels beneath Alexandria, it's difficult not to wonder if those ancient myths conceal more truth than we're willing to admit. Because the deeper archaeologists dig, the more it seems that they are not uncovering the origins of civilization, but its ruins, the broken fragments of a past that was once far more advanced than our own. And as excavations continue beneath the Egyptian sands, one haunting realization grows harder to ignore. Perhaps the ancients were not looking to the heavens to worship the gods. Perhaps they were looking to the heavens because they remembered where they came from. As archaeologists dig deeper into the sands of Egypt, it becomes increasingly clear that what they are uncovering is not simply the story of a single civilization, but the fragmented record of humanity itself, a record that seems to start already halfway through the tale. The further they descend, the more the familiar Egypt of hieroglyphs and mummified kings fades away, replaced by something far older, colder, and infinitely more mysterious. In 2024, a team from Cairo University, working alongside international researchers, conducted seismic scans beneath the Great Pyramid and the nearby Sphinx enclosure. The data revealed anomalies. Large voids buried more than 40 meters underground. These were not random cracks or cavities in the rock. They were geometric, symmetrical, and too regular to be natural. One of the voids, located beneath the Sphinx's right paw, appeared to connect to a tunnel leading toward the pyramid complex itself. Egyptian legends have long spoken of a hall of records, a hidden chamber said to contain the knowledge of a forgotten civilization, sealed away after a global catastrophe. For centuries, it was dismissed as a myth, the invention of mystics and dreamers. But the recent scans reignited the debate. Could the ancients have truly preserved something beneath the sands, waiting for a future generation to rediscover it? When archaeologists attempted to probe the void, they encountered something unexpected. The ground beneath the Sphinx vibrated faintly, producing an irregular magnetic pulse that distorted instruments and disabled sensors. The readings spiked at intervals, rhythmic, almost alive. Some of the researchers dismissed it as interference from nearby machinery, but others were not so sure. One of the engineers on the team later said in a private interview, "It felt like the Earth was breathing." And that wasn't the only anomaly. Similar distortions were detected beneath the Great Pyramid, inside the so-called Big Void identified by muon tomography. Infrasound sensors recorded low-frequency vibrations between 8 and 12 Hz, the same range that can trigger unease, dizziness, and even hallucinations in humans. For centuries, visitors to the King's Chamber have reported strange sensations, headaches, nausea, overwhelming awe, without understanding why. Now, it seems the very structure of the pyramid might be amplifying frequencies that affect the human body. Was this an unintended coincidence, or part of a deliberate design? If it was intentional, then whoever built the Great Pyramid was not merely constructing a tomb or a monument. They were manipulating resonance, the very vibration of the Earth itself. Physicists studying the chamber's dimensions have noted something extraordinary. The granite blocks of the King's Chamber resonate at a frequency that corresponds almost exactly to the Earth's natural electromagnetic pulse, the Schumann resonance. In other words, the Great Pyramid seems to be tuned to the planet like a musical instrument. Could this have been an ancient form of energy generation? Or perhaps a device for communication, amplification, or something beyond our understanding? The more we learn, the stranger it becomes. Even more disturbing discoveries began to emerge from the underground tunnels. In a newly opened section beneath the Osiris shaft, archaeologists found traces of an ancient fire, blackened soot fused to the ceiling, alongside vitrified rock that could only have been created at extreme temperatures. But the most unsettling find came from a small chamber at the lowest level. A human skeleton, perfectly preserved in the mineral-rich water, its skull showing signs of exposure to intense heat from within, as if it had burned without flame. Radiocarbon dating placed the remains at more than 8,000 years old, thousands of years before the accepted rise of dynastic Egypt. Official statements avoided the discovery, citing contamination of samples. But privately, team members admitted that nothing about it made sense. The further they ventured, the more it felt as though they were descending not just into the Earth, but into another epoch, a time when Egypt was something very different from the world we imagine. And then, as if history itself conspired to confirm it, something remarkable happened. In late 2024, during restoration work inside the Great Pyramid's descending corridor, workers uncovered a sealed niche behind a collapsed section of limestone. Inside was a slab covered with strange markings. Not hieroglyphs, not any known script. The symbols resembled mathematical patterns, spirals, and geometric grids carved with microscopic precision. The stone emitted a faint metallic hum when touched. Tests revealed high concentrations of quartz and traces of an unknown alloy fused into its surface, suggesting that it had been exposed to intense energy, perhaps electromagnetic or plasma-based. The slab was quietly removed, transported to a government facility in Cairo, and never shown to the public again. But one photograph leaked online, a blurred image showing a spiral with intersecting rays, eerily similar to depictions of the solar disk in Sumerian iconography. Coincidence or connection? Whatever it was, the message seemed clear. Egypt's greatest monuments were not isolated wonders. They were nodes, points on a global map of ancient knowledge that once spanned continents. From the pyramids of Mesoamerica to the temples of Angkor, from the stone circles of Britain to the terraces of Peru, the same mathematics, the same geometry, and the same astronomical alignments appear again and again, all tuned to the stars, all echoing a single origin. As the evidence grows, the idea of independent development becomes harder to defend. There was communication, perhaps even a shared source. A civilization older than Egypt, older than Sumer, perhaps even older than humanity as we know it. And then comes the question that chills every archaeologist who dares to think it through. What happened to them? If they were capable of such feats, of carving and moving stones weighing hundreds of tons, of aligning monuments with cosmic precision, of manipulating sound and energy, how could they vanish so completely? The most haunting possibility is that they didn't vanish by accident. Something ended them. Geological evidence shows that around 12,800 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, Earth suffered a sudden catastrophe. Global flooding, massive temperature swings, and the extinction of countless species. Some scientists now believe this was caused by fragments of a comet striking the northern hemisphere. If such an event wiped out a global civilization, it would explain everything. The myths of Atlantis, the Sumerian flood, and the Egyptian stories of the first time when the gods walked the earth before the waters rose. What we call the beginning of history may, in truth, be its second act, the slow rebirth of humanity after the ashes of a forgotten world. And perhaps that's why Egypt's ancient builders left their greatest monuments not as tombs or temples, but as warnings. Monuments designed to endure, to whisper across millennia. This has happened before. When you stand before the Great Pyramid, when you feel the weight of that silence pressing down from the stones, it's hard not to sense that warning. The air inside feels heavy, charged, alive, as if the monument itself remembers. Maybe that's what we've been digging toward all along. Not treasure, not tombs, but memory. The memory of a world that rose, mastered forces we've only begun to rediscover, and then fell into dust. And if the sands of Egypt have taught us anything, it's that what has been buried is never truly gone. It waits, patient, eternal, and silent, for us to uncover it again.